Hello and welcome to the Red Bull Driftbrothers YouTube channel. As you maybe know, drifting is one of the fastest growing motorsport out there. And last week, drifting filled a whole football stadium in Poland with 53,000 spectators, which is absolutely outrageous. A lot of people want to go into drifting, and we will show you what you need with this car by reverse engineering what we built like 1 year ago on our German YouTube channel. There are a lot of different styles of drift cars, like when you're watching our channel, you're maybe most known to our BMW M4s, which are pro cars, and pro cars have the stupid thing that they always want to commit suicide and need a lot of attention and work to run properly. So this is not the car you want to start out with. You maybe know my 300ZX, which I built a couple of years back, which actually got me into drifting. This is also not a really good car for drifting because it's quite reliable, but the parts are hard to come by. It's quite expensive to run, it needs a lot of care and new tires and all that stuff, and you're way too quick for most of the other drivers out there. Hey! Shit! Which isn't fun if you actually want to train tandems. Then there are a couple other projects we have here, which would be this tube frame R33, which I started, which is horrible if you want to go into drifting, because you have to think about that this car will never make the same hours on the track as you need to prep it in the workshop, the initial build, and keeping it alive. So what you actually want to have if you want to go into drifting is a missile car. This one is my missile car. This actually is Stefan's missile car up there on the lift. The boys have missile cars as well. This is the car I have, and as you can see, it's already a bit roughed out because it did a few events since last year, like I do believe around 10 or something. And we will show you the in and outs of which car to start, what to modify to have the best track day you can imagine. So if you want to start out drifting, you absolutely need a missile. And what is a missile? A missile is basically a seat time car which you just drive around all day, don't need to work a lot on it, and just run through sets of tires and fuel. The main goals for a missile: it needs to be cheap, needs to be reliable, needs to be lots of fun, basically never breaks down, which won't happen, but it must be repaired with the least amount of time possible and the least amount of parts possible. There are obviously a lot of other options in drift cars, like the basic things it needs to have. Like, it needs to be rear-wheel drive, it needs to have around 150 horsepower to 200, depending on the weight. It needs to be a manual, basically. You can drift automatic, but you won't learn that much on it, at least in my opinion, and I don't like it. So, for looking for the right base car, there are a lot of options, as you may know, and maybe see on this car and some other of my cars, which were in the YouTube channel already. I'm a big sucker for Japanese cars. They're really good as a base model for a drift car, like the 200 SX, S13, S14, S15, all of the Skylines basically. They deliver quite a lot of power, have a great suspension setup, and you can get basically all the parts to make them great drift cars. The other downside is, like, they're really expensive now. The other option would be 350Zs, which are around 10 grand and make a really reliable drift car. Out there are also Mazda MX-5s, which are really great for drifting. They are only 120 horsepower, but they're really lightweight, so it works out as well. And for me, in my opinion, the best value for money option right now is a 3 Series BMW. The E46 have gotten a lot more expensive. You can still get cheap ones out there, but they're usually not that good. And the E46 are up and coming and not that expensive right now. And they make proper drift cars because they're a bit more sturdy than the E36 and everything. So that's where I started. The E46 was my option of choice, and I got that pristine example back in the days for 1,100 euro, and it was rusted to death like you can't believe. It was holes basically everywhere. The car did its own weight reduction by just shedding rust all over a workshop for like 3 weeks or however long it took us to build that car. The other thing you need to think about, if you go to an event with, let's say, a Volvo, which I have seen, and I think is really great because it's a rare sight out there and it's nice to see some of these cars drifting, you need to bring all the spare parts which could break with you. If you have something like an E36, an E46, there are lots of guys out there running the same cars, and if everyone brings a bit of the spare parts, then as a group, you have enough to repair all the cars throughout the weekend, no matter what breaks. If you're looking for a base car, there are a few points you need to take care of. Like, there are a lot of points which can drive the price down. Like, if it's not street legal anymore, doesn't matter for drifting. If your windscreen is cracked, like this one here, it doesn't matter for drifting as long as it's not falling in. If it has rust, that's fine as well, as long as it's not bad structural rust, because if you have really bad structural rust, you actually need to replace the parts, and this can open a rabbit hole like you can't imagine, and you will throw a lot of money into it. They're also like ripped out interior, water damage to a certain degree, are all points which can drive your price down, and you don't actually need that much interior in a drift car. You don't need it, but you might like to have it. If the AC doesn't work, it doesn't matter for you. If the PDC doesn't work, it doesn't matter for you. There are a lot of things that can drive the price down. What you actually should take care of in a drift car is that the engine is really good and the transmission should be really good as well as the differential. These are like 3 basic points. No structural rust, then you're basically good to go. A worn-out clutch is perfect for you as well, because you can negotiate the price down and it won't matter because you will replace the clutch in drifting anyway, which is excellent. Bikes don't matter that much, to be honest. Just get out there, go on Facebook Marketplace or whichever platform you prefer, and just look for the old, dirty, bit broken cars which you can get and make them into missiles and give them a second life and a second chance to die on the track and not in a junkyard. Coming back to this beauty, like this car cost me 1,100 euros last year, beginning of last year, which was quite cheap for that time. You can get them cheaper, but I wanted to have more style and I actually wanted to have a coupe. We have some pictures left over from back in the days when I just got the car, and I can tell you this car was as badly rusted as it gets. The structures were all fairly good. We will come back to that later, but the outside, like the doors had rust holes in them, all the fender lines were like rusted to death, like you can't believe it. You can still see some rust bubbling up over here in the door sill and everything. This car would have never been street legal in Germany. If you actually wanted to put the money in to repair it, it would be possible. But it's much smarter to get a better car and just drive that instead of repairing that. So this car would have been doomed to die on a junkyard. The gearbox was good, the engine was good, it ran fine. I did a pull in like the first gear on the street, on a small private street obviously, because it had no number plates. Car was fine, I picked it up. What you first should do when you get a car, you should make a basic maintenance, like change the spark plugs, check the coils, change oil, change coolant. Just give the car a proper checkup if anything is wrong about it. Try to shift through all the gears and really try to check whatever is possible to not get surprised on your first race event, because this is horrible if you build a new car and it's actually not running, you're not having a good time. So every minute you spend here in the workshop is usually a minute well spent, because it keeps the car going on the track for longer. One big thing in any race car, whatsoever, is the weight reduction. The less weight you have, the better it is. Basically, in drifting, less weight means less tire wear. The lighter the car is, the better the tire consumption is. And tire consumption can be a big thing on a drift car. It would be in everybody's best interest to make your car as light as possible. There are some drawbacks to this, like the lighter a car is, it's usually more uncomfortable. And I like to opt for an option somewhere in the middle there. I like to rip out everything in the rear, which I basically don't need. I like to leave my door cards in. I like to leave my A-pillars and my roof stuff in. And I also like to leave my carpet in, because with all this stuff into the front, it's a bit front heavy, which I don't mind, but it's so much more comfortable to drive. If you have a car which is really loud and really hot, it won't be a seat-time car for you as well, because you just can't stand driving it. Like, we have a clip of my 300ZX for sure. This car is fully stripped out. It's horrible loud. It's incredible hot in there. and I need to take some aspirin before I actually drive the car in the morning. If not, I'm not coming through the day with that car. It is up to you. I also have AC in my car, which is also nice because it cools you down in between laps. But it is up to you how much you want to strip out. The more you strip out, the better for sure. But I'm in my 30s and I like to have some comfort, even though the car is partially stripped out. After the car is stripped out, you might be able to make some money back on the interior parts, which you can sell. And everything else which you can't sell basically goes into the trash. Now that your car is stripped out, you need to think about some safety stuff. I like to replace my steering wheel because I think it's much nicer than a stock wheel for drifting for me. It's with this Alcantara suit stuff from Slide. They're really nice, they're really sturdy, I like them a lot. And which I also put in were these Slide bucket seats. A bucket seat is basically the connection from your ass to the car, and it really helps you to read the car properly, what the tires do, what the car does, what the suspension does. If you're really connected to the car, the bucket seat helps out a lot. If you have old leather seats where you slide around, it's not too pleasant to drive with them. And with the bucket seats, you know what goes well there? Harnesses. And the full 5-point harness, it actually straps you in, keeps you from sliding around as well. And it also makes the drifting thing a lot safer, which you should also take a bit of concern in there. We also did safety-wise. We removed all the airbags from the A-pillars, from the steering wheel, because we changed it. Obviously, the passenger airbag and the door airbags are all gone. They also bring you some money, and they won't explode in your face if someone hits your door or something, which is nice as well, because I can imagine being hit by an airbag to the face is not the most pleasant thing in the world. Perfect. That's it for episode 1. Like, we've shown you a lot of stuff. We've shown you what base model to choose, what basic stuff to do to it, how to do weight reduction, and what safety stuff to put in, like seats, belts, steering wheel, and all the good stuff. In the next episode, we go for a deep dive into the suspension setups, like we put the lock kit in, we put the camber arms in the back, we reinforce the structure of the rear subframe, which is quite essential on these cars. We weld the diff, and we show you how we do suspension setups on these cars to make them drift properly. That's like worth 1,000 videos, how to adjust your suspension stuff. But we give you a quick overview that you can make the car like you want your car to be.